The reason I'm making this video is due to a case I've recently discovered where a man in Canada named Greg Elliott could be facing 6 months in prison for, in all essence, disagreeing with feminists. The charge is, of course, harassment. Karen Strawn did an excellent job of relaying all the details in this video linked below. Mr. Elliott's legal fund is also posted below. I don't think I'm too late. So pause this, watch your video, and then come back. So since I'm hearing about this case now, I thought I would respond to Stephanie Guthrie's TEDx talk, who is a woman accusing Mr. Elliott of harassing her online. There were a few clips of this in Karen's video, but I wanted to respond to it in full. Okay, so anyone who's followed my channel for a sufficient amount of time knows that I'm an avid opponent of modern feminism, victim culture, and social justice movements. I really do think that they all deserve to be lumped in together because there's so much bleed between the three camps that they're practically the same organism. But moving on. Now, I generally hold by a standard principle regarding whether or not I will join a group. One of those criterion being if your group has a throwaway label for people not in your group. If your group summarily decides that there are only two camps you can fall into, one of which is their side and the other which is the bad side, then you've already laid the groundwork for a cult. So in regards to anarchists, generally, the toss-aside label is statist or tax slave, whatever, you get the idea. Maybe I've run into the bad ones. Regarding victim feminists, that word is misogynist. And before anyone screams, "You're doing that with feminists!" I do not believe that feminists are an other. If that were the case, then in order to oppose a cult, one must create a brand new cult every single time. For example, I don't use the word feminist to dismiss an argument. It's not a name-calling tactic like misogynist is. The difference between the thought processes of someone who's in a cult and someone who isn't in a cult is this. I believe that there are many good people out there who are feminists. However, see if you can get a feminist to tell you that there are good people out there who are misogynists. Take it away, Miss Guthrie. Don't feed the misogynists. Sorry, I mean trolls.
I have this folder on my computer desktop called Death Threats.
Oh man, we're just leading with the hook. Alright, me too. I have one of those. I made it just now. What's your point? Please notice how all of the people exhibiting this behavior aren't known for their feminism. They aren't known for anything other than, I get death threats. So thanks, Stephanie, for letting us know your qualifications ahead of time. I know. Whenever I read people telling me about how they're going to kill me and my family, I just bust a stitch. It's hilarious. It's so scary, in fact, that I'm laughing on stage in public about how scared I am. When I look at these feminists talk about their death threats on stage, it's like watching someone tell themselves a joke where no one else gets the punchline. They just end up awkwardly laughing to themselves. Compare those people to Ayaan Hirsi Ali when she speaks about the threats on her life. Big difference.
It's sad to say that this can be par for the course when you're a woman with an opinion on the internet, especially a feminist opinion.
That's weird because I'm neither a woman nor a feminist and I've received death threats over the internet. So any argument you could make could apply to me as well. If I asked nicely, could I get TEDx to host a 14-minute speech where I do nothing but talk about death threats I get on the internet? Is this an ideological sales pitch or a pathetic attempt to gain notoriety just like many feminists before you? Why do people keep falling for the same tactic? I'm a feminist and I get death threats, please notice me. Looking at you, Rebecca Watson, Melody Hensley, Anita Sarkeesian, Valerie DeRazio, it's the same game plan every time.
The folder name might sound a little, terrifying.
Oh, stop giving yourself the giggles. The audience doesn't find humor in threats on your life like you seem to. I know it's weird.
But I think it's important to call things what they actually are.
Okay, then I'd like to call your speech a load of bullshit. I'm sure you won't mind.
There's this thing that we used to call misogyny or sexism that we now call misogynist trolling.
So instead of describing something by calling it the noun misogyny, we use misogynist trolling. Well, those describe two different things, one of which is a hatred or dislike of women and girls, the other is pretending to hate women and girls to create chaos in a community. Wait. Oh my goodness, give me a second.
Whenever it happens on the internet.
Oh, okay, whenever it happens on the internet. Continue.
Trolling is a storied internet tradition. The modus operandi? To pretend to hold a particular point of view with the sole or primary purpose of creating chaos in a community.
I want everyone to look back at the atheism and skepticism community and what actually happened there. Look at the gaming community, the science fiction community, the comic book community. How these feminist trolls went into a community, claimed that they believed there was a bunch of misogyny in the community and proceeded to create chaos in those communities. The difference is they probably actually hold that belief. Guthrie thinks she's describing what all of those evil, horrible trolls do, but she is actually, throughout this whole speech, going to detail what the feminist game plan is. And also, just a quick addendum, you can troll communities or individuals. It's not restricted to a community.
And because trolls are mainly there to provoke, just for the sake of provocation, the troll fighting strategy has always been to ignore them. Don't feed the trolls, we say.
Well, considering that their goal is to provoke you, not getting provoked would be the way to combat that, don't you think? It's really basic stuff, but what's the alternative, Stephanie?
So, when we call a spouter of vile misogyny a troll...
Seriously, everyone, just wait till you see her examples. You're either going to laugh or cry. Or both.
What are we really saying? We're saying, don't take it seriously, ignore it.
Yeah, because the troll's goal is you taking them seriously.
Tell me why I shouldn't take these kinds of things seriously.
Curious, how much do you spend on hair color and face putty each month? More than what welfare bums get per month? Not sexism, misogyny, or a death threat. Come on, you gotta admit it's impossible to be that stupid and not be drunk. Oh my, maybe not in your circle. Not sexism, misogyny, or a death threat.
These have all been directed at either me or women I know through my organization.
Seriously? Are you fucking kidding? Ugh. That's somebody making a claim about getting insulted online. It's not even the fucking insult. It's a tweet where someone says they got insulted somewhere else by male supporters. Jesus Christ.
Women in Toronto politics. Many of these things sound a lot like the misogyny a woman might face in the workplace.
Seriously, are you kidding me? That there are people in the workplace who say, I think the proper present for International Men's Day is a blowjob. Feel free to start sucking any time, honey. Where do you work?
In her home. On the street. Do we tell women not to take a workplace sexual harasser seriously?
Oh look, the first tweet that could be construed as a threat is someone quoting somebody else asking, OMG, like, where do I report this? Why aren't you showing us the actual tweets and only showing us people saying that they got them?
What about a woman whose work takes place on the internet? Can she just ignore it?
Yes. Yes, she can.
Should rape threats be a rite of passage?
Oh, we're going with rape threats now. Okay. Well, I have yet to see a tweet in your little collage there that actually shows a rape threat. It only shows people supposedly relaying the horrible tweets they got. Please show us one tweet that is a death and or rape threat. Just one.
For women with something to say on the internet?
Are you sure that none of those people sending you those messages were women? I'm sure that never even crossed your mind, because only men do this.
And the goal of many of these alleged trolls isn't just to provoke people, it's to shut women up.
Again, some of these alleged trolls might be women. Just saying, but it's par for the course for women like you to take insults against them personally and project that insult onto all women. People can't possibly be insulting you because you're stupid, malicious, myopic, vindictive, or all around not a nice person. They can only be insulting you because you're a woman. Watertight logic there.
And by not engaging them, we're giving them exactly what they want. Sounds like a pretty great strategy, right?
Wait. I thought that what they wanted is provocation. If you ignore them, then that would include not shutting up. So if you shut up due to trolling, that is necessarily you not ignoring them.
There's something else that really bothers me about the use of the word troll to describe garden variety misogyny.
Just gonna throw this out there, I personally think that 99% of the misogynistic tweets you get aren't misogynistic at all. They're just insults. Insults directed at particular women, not all women. Thank goodness you don't represent all women.
It suggests that this is an internet problem rather than a society problem, one that's been around in countless cultures over countless centuries.
Yes, because we all know that societies around the world just hit women with death and rape threats all the time. Are you seriously telling me that you're on your commute to work and there are men who will just shout, I'm going to rape and kill you? You aren't living in reality. Interact with people who aren't behind a screen a little bit more, and maybe you'll see why your delusion is a delusion. How many death threats and/or rape threats by men did you receive on your trip to this speech?
Why qualify it with a word like trolling when really it's misogyny and it's hideous?
Insulting an individual woman is not insulting all women, nor does it mean the person making the insult has an innate prejudice against women, or that the person making the insult isn't a woman. I will continue saying this until feminists start listening. Male feminists probably get insulted all the time too, sometimes by women. But men can't be the victim of misogyny, can they?
I'm going to tell you a story today about hatred of women on the internet.
I think you meant to say particular women on the internet.
I'll talk about some of the features of online communication that have allowed misogyny to flourish, and also some of the features of online misogyny that make it easier than ever to confront, challenge, and change.
Okay, so I think we have the ground rules laid out. Anytime a woman gets insulted by a man on the internet, misogyny. Anytime a woman gets insulted by another woman on the internet, misogyny. Anytime a feminist insults a woman on the internet, feminists can't possibly be misogynistic. Whenever feminists do it, it's okay, because that woman probably had internalized misogyny and was being a total jerk and deserved it. Am I close?
Last summer, misogynists were engaged in a virulent hate campaign against Anita Sarkeesian, a feminist media critic who was crowdfunding a video series to look at how women are represented in video games. They besieged her YouTube and Kickstarter pages with misogynist and anti-Semitic comments. They vandalized her Wikipedia page. They drew and photoshopped her into some truly disgusting, violent, pornographic scenes. And worst of all, one man in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, built a video game inviting players to click on a close-up photo of Anita's face and watch bruises and contusions appear until she was basically a bloody pulp.
Are you telling me that instead of ignoring the feminist troll who was pretending to believe that there's rampant misogyny in the gaming community in order to provoke a response and create chaos in that community so she could make money off it, they engaged her? Isn't that what you're advocating for? Also, it's funny how you say misogynist as if the only people insulting Anita Sarkeesian are misogynists. Even the women.
You may not want to look at this next slide. Oh, there we go.
You may not want to look at this next slide. It's fake! It is a fake picture of someone beaten up. Need I remind you that the developer of this game made a very similar game when Jack Thompson was making very similar arguments and intruding on the gaming community? Change video games forever. They're too violent and ruining our youth. Guy makes game where you can beat up Jack Thompson. Change video games forever. They're too sexist and ruining our youth. Guy makes game where you can beat up Anita Sarkeesian. But remember, everyone, someone doing the same thing to a woman as he would to a man in the same situation is not equality. Only feminists know what that is. Jack Thompson started a hate campaign against video games by claiming that they make children violent. Anita Sarkeesian started a hate campaign against video games by claiming that they promote sexism and misogyny, and there is a massive population of sexists and misogynists in the gaming community. But apparently, a throng of men and women saying, "Fuck you, Anita, we aren't misogynists," is an organized hate campaign. Here, let me be Anita Sarkeesian. The rock climbing community is swamped with racists. Don't say "fuck you, I'm not a racist" to me, or I'll call hate campaign.
I mean, what is it about the internet that encouraged this guy to publish this game and to put that out there? First of all, social distance. After hitting publish, he could leave his computer, go make dinner, and not have to look Anita in the face. Because the communication takes place in a virtual space, it's easy for many internet users to convince themselves that the people, the subject matter, and even in some cases their own actions are somehow not real.
No one is actually beating up Anita Sarkeesian. That game isn't real. When you click the button, Anita doesn't actually get beaten up, you know. Ben Spur doesn't advocate for the actual beating up of Anita Sarkeesian. Just like the makers of Grand Theft Auto don't actually condone shooting police officers or running over prostitutes. Just like the makers of Hitman don't condone killing people for money. It's really not that hard of a concept to wrap your mind around.
Another key feature of online communication is performance. We tailor our words and expressions with an audience in mind. The misogynists attacking Anita Sarkeesian were doing so, at least in part, to draw a reaction from an audience. The Beat Up Anita Sarkeesian game was an interactive performance. The creator vividly staged his own views and invited players to get up on stage with him.
Try to toss this idea around in your brain for a while, Miss Guthrie. The people, not misogynists, who are insulting and criticizing Anita Sarkeesian aren't the people doing the trolling. Anita is the one doing the trolling, and those are the people responding to a troll. She barged into the community, made a bunch of claims about how gamers are consuming material that turns them into sexists and misogynists. Then when she receives proper criticism for those claims, she turns around and says, "See, look at all of them attacking a woman. My claim that they are misogynists rings true." And what were those views that Ben Spur, the creator of the game, expressed? Here is Karen reading off the preface to Spur's game.
Who is Anita Sarkeesian? Anita Sarkeesian is a con artist who poses as a feminist on YouTube with her biased show, Feminist Frequency. Recently, she claimed she needed $6,000 in order to start a mini video series on sexism towards women in video games. These videos would require no more money to produce or any more research than she's put into any of her previous YouTube videos. She just decided that the ad revenue from YouTube wasn't enough to line her pockets. She raised over $160,000. So far, her videos have proven to have no research put into them whatsoever. She has effectively conned thousands of people. There is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting equality for women. The problem is people like Anita are only selfishly looking out for their own benefits. They want all the perks that everyone else earns without any of the work or risk involved. Anita Sarkeesian is a person who is scammed thousands of people who simply do not know any better, because she knows they do not know any better. Nothing she has done or ever will do will benefit anyone but herself. She has refused to address any form of criticism whatsoever and hides behind the fact that she has a vagina, claiming it's sexist to criticize her in any way. She claims to want equality. Well, here it is. There's been a disgusting large imbalance of men who get beaten up in games. Let's add a lady to help balance things.
What an evil, vile, hideous misogynist, am I right?
Finally, at least so far, the internet has largely been a consequence-free zone. Law enforcement's use of the internet has mainly been directed toward piracy, terrorism, and child pornography.
I'm sorry. Are they not spending enough time on being your personal goon squad that investigates anyone who calls you a name over the internet? Women have it so hard these days.
And only very recently have they really begun to investigate things like online harassment.
That's because there was no public online until 1995. Seriously, it's like saying 20 years after the automobile came out, police have only recently begun investigating automobile accidents. Anyway, barring that, I looked up cyber harassment, and the second result is a Wikipedia article explaining cyber harassment. But linked directly below the large font link is Jump to Gender-Based Stalking. This is how long and well the termites have dined. Of course, online harassment to this woman is basically calling her ugly once online. Someone grab the bib and high chair.
Hate speech and death threats.
Just a quick reminder, you didn't show us an example of either in your presentation.
But I'm not just talking about a lack of state-sanctioned consequences here, which, let's face it, tend not to apply to everyone equally.
That's true. Men generally receive longer sentences than women do for the same crime. How does this help your point, though?
And in many cases actually have the effect of making things worse.
How? First you claim that law enforcement is finally investigating these things, and now you're saying that state-sanctioned consequences make things worse? What types of consequences do you propose, you increasingly terrifying woman?
I'm also talking about a lack of social consequences.
Like lynching?
Like maybe facing a torrent of criticism for your garbage behavior?
Go ahead. I'll just call it a hate campaign and make a shitload of money on Kickstarter. Your move, Guthrie. Tell us why it's okay when you do it.
A dominant wisdom that says don't feed the trolls means that many misogynists and other bigots never have to face their critics, because their critics are encouraged to shut up.
They aren't encouraged to shut up, they're encouraged to ignore them. If you shut up due to trolls, then you aren't ignoring them. We've been over this.
Not only does this mean that they can continue their behavior with impunity, but it gives them the impression that their views are popular.
Nothing you displayed in your presentation, none of the tweets, were misogynistic. There were insults directed at particular women. If I go online and start hurling insults at you like, "You look like Velma from Scooby-Doo's ugly cousin," that does not mean that I hate all women. It also does not make that tweet misogynistic. And if you received that under a name that doesn't specify gender, like Scooby-Doo Fan 89, you'd have no idea whether a man or woman sent it. Insults aren't thrown at you because you're a woman. There are plenty of other reasons for why people detest you.
This is one thing we internet users have the power to change. And in the case of the beat-up Anita Sarkeesian game, it was one thing I couldn't allow to stand.
You couldn't allow someone wanting equality in video games by having a woman fictionally beaten up in a game while not advocating that she get beat up in real life? Men are beaten up all the time in video games. You should be proud of this step towards equality. Smash those gender roles. Anyway, please describe to us the social consequences you laid down.
When I visited the site where the game had been hosted, the game had been taken down, but its description, as well as the username of its creator, Bendolin Spur, remained. I searched for Bendolin on Twitter, and I found him in seconds. His Twitter feed was filled with derogatory and vaguely misogynist comments about Anita, so it was pretty clearly the same Bendolin Spur.
Take note of how she uses one part of the preface to portray him as some kind of misogynist. Please refer to Karen previously in this video for the entire preface.
I confronted him with this tweet. The tweet intentionally drew a parallel between his online and offline selves by asking if the game represented his actions IRL, or in real life, if you don't use the internet as much as I do.
Hey Bendolin, do you punch women in the face IRL, or just on the internet? This guy made the Anita Sarkeesian face punch game. Others retweet. It's almost like you're trying to stir up some kind of... damn it, what's the word?
Virulent hate campaign.
Thanks, sweetheart.
In another tweet, I suggested employers might just find his game objectionable and notified the Twitter account of his local newspaper.
Huh? Really? Now you're trying to make him unemployable, not be able to feed himself, and end up on the street, all because he made a tongue-in-cheek game regarding the punching of Anita Sarkeesian that you didn't like. You are fucking insane. You're accusing a guy of harassing you for disagreeing with you on Twitter, remember? I hope the defense gets their hands on these tweets. There you have it, folks. A woman who found something too risque for her tastes on the internet attempts to make a man unemployable. A woman complains about harassment while attempting to stir up a hate campaign against Ben Spur, and the audience cheers. Good luck, Toronto. You're gonna need it.
The conversation caught fire, and within an hour, hundreds of Twitter users were participating in some capacity.
In what capacity? Were they calling him a misogynist, a piece of shit, a worthless nothing, a harasser, a vile, hideous asshole? No, of course not. I'm sure they were all incredibly polite to him and merely said, "I respectfully disagree with the appropriateness of your video game, good sir." You overplay the harassment you receive and downplay the harassment you cause.
When I documented the confrontation and Bendolin's response the next morning...
What was his response? You won't show us, and I can't seem to find it myself on Twitter. But I'm sure we all know that if it was misogynistic or, yeah, I punch women IRL all the time, it'd be in the presentation.
The post spread like wildfire, drawing thousands more into the discussion. On a massive scale, people were demonstrating where they stood on the matter, and in doing so, they were drawing new lines in the sand of our social interactions.
And those lines are dictated by you and your squadron of flying monkeys now, huh? Fuck off, sugar tits. Try me. I absolutely love how you're attempting to say that those thousands of people involved in the discussion were doing nothing but respectfully disagreeing and showing where they stood on the matter. It's cute. It really is. In a really horrifying kind of way.
So, how were we able to confront this man through means that might not have been available offline?
Pitchfork and torch supplies are low.
Well, remember how the performative nature of online behavior encourages new expressions of the same old misogyny? Well, online performance can also challenge that behavior. By confronting Bendolin in a public forum like Twitter, rather than, say, emailing him, I was demonstrating or performing the type of way that I thought would be good to challenge him.
So, exactly what those evil misogynist trolls do. You stated your views and invited the audience to get on stage with you.
And my performance, like his game, was interactive. I invited audience members, if you will, to leap out of their seats and get on stage.
Oh, wow. I didn't even have to say that.
Now, I couldn't control what they did once they got there.
What?
Now, I couldn't control what they did once they got there.
Are you seriously saying this?
Now, I couldn't control what they did once they got there.
One more time in slow motion.
Now, I couldn't control what they did once they got there.
And you didn't even care. You mental case.
But I could model or perform the type of engagement I wanted to see and hope that others would either follow my lead or maybe teach me something new in the process.
So you wanted people to contact his potential employers in order to make him unemployable. And you are saying that this is okay, but calling you ugly online isn't.
Another key feature of online communication is visibility. The internet has made examples of misogyny and other forms of bigotry much more public and visible than they once were.
That cuts in both directions.
Think about it. Once upon a time, the average misogynist's views were mainly inflicted on people in his immediate social circle or day-to-day interactions. A partner, a colleague, a family member, a waitress. And in many cases, there was no permanent record that those on the receiving end could point to say, this was real, it really happened, and it was really painful. Now, thanks to the internet, misogyny's targets are diffuse, and its expressions are time-stamped.
You did not display a single example of misogyny. Luckily, telling a bunch of people to contact someone's potential employers, calling him someone who advocates for the beating of women, gets time-stamped too.
There are websites like Fat, Ugly, or Slutty that invite internet users to submit derogatory comments made at women gamers.
Male gamers get derogatory messages too. Yet there is an entire website dedicated to the documentation of bad shit said to women gamers only. Where's the male equivalent of that? Oh yeah, nowhere.
There are Twitter accounts like Everyday Sexism that retweet so many real-life sexist microaggressions per hour that any follower would be hard-pressed to say sexism is no longer a problem.
If we're counting microaggressions as an actual issue, then what was all that fanfare? I forgot, you can't be sexist against man.
In this way, the internet has actually made it easier for people who have never been subject to a form of bigotry to understand just how widespread and harmful it is.
I agree.
Games like the Beat Up Anita Sarkeesian game are highly visible examples of misogyny that I and other critics can point to.
Not misogyny, no matter how hard you'd like to assert it. Bendelin Spur doesn't dislike all women. He dislikes Anita. And you now.
Visible examples like these can become the catalysts for bigger, macro-level discussions about the problems they represent.
This wasn't a discussion. It was you riling up a horde of minions to attack Spur. You can't call someone insulting you online misogyny. You can't project an insult directed at one woman to all women. You can't call harassment challenging problematic behavior. You can't call reacting negatively to actual bigoted statements a hate campaign, and you certainly can't call riling up a hate campaign a discussion. Screw it, I'm out of here!
Finally, discussions about bigotry on the internet can go viral, spreading far beyond the bigot and their initial target.
Anita, toxic masculinity, school shootings, ringing any bells?
This does, of course, mean that hate campaigns like the one against Anita Sarkeesian can go viral and recruit lots more misogynists, so that's the downside.
Which is worse? Having a snarky game made about you where people can fictionally beat you up, or have all of your potential employers contacted and who knows what you told them, So you are made unemployable all because someone didn't think what you made was appropriate.
But I think it's important to remember that challenges to that misogyny can also pick up steam.
Translation. My hate campaign can beat up your hate campaign. Even though it's not a hate campaign.
As of last night, my initial post of the confrontation with Bendel and Spur had been shared nearly 30,000 times.
Didn't get that applause you were looking for, huh?
See, bigotry can be elusive to bigots themselves. See, bigotry can be elusive to bigots themselves.
Stop. 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 You're just making it worse for yourself.
See, bigotry can be elusive to bigots themselves.
You're a bigot because I say you are. I know your thoughts better than you do. One more time in slow motion for good measure.
See, bigotry can be elusive to bigots themselves. Sexism and misogyny, when you think about it, are in many ways our status quo.
Bullshit. Substantiate something.
So if you say something sexist, it might not really seem sexist. It might just seem normal.
A feminist trying to demonize normal behavior. How original.
Bendel and Spur had convinced himself that creating a video game simulating the brutalization of a feminist he disagreed with was not misogynist. And if it had just been me disagreeing with him, it might have been a lot easier for observers to believe that too.
It's funny. People are calling me a misogynist for making a game where you hit a person just because that person's a woman. Ben Spur made a game where you are violent towards Jack Thompson. Ben Spur then made a game where you are violent towards Anita Sarkeesian. Yet when the Sarkeesian game came out, all of a sudden you reined in thousands of people to call him a misogynist, even though he doesn't dislike or hate women simply for being women. Doing or saying something negative towards a single woman is not misogyny, just like doing something or saying something negative towards a single man is not misandry or the automatic hatred of all men. Unless we're going by your standard, Miss Guthrie, then you have committed an act of misandry online for contacting this man's employer.
But thanks to the virality of the conversation, thousands of people were in his virtual face saying, "Actually, dude, that's pretty misogynist."
Hate campaigns are hilarious when they're happening to men.
The thing is, social norms...
Yes, I know, I can hardly contain my laughter too, even though I was making the audience terrified of the exact same thing earlier in this speech.
Yeah, shout out to Gabe Knox. Hilarious.
I think I'm actually speechless.
See, the thing about social norms is they don't just trickle from the top down. We create them collectively.
I'll show you what the social norms look like. Here's what happens when a woman is insulted, criticized, and has snarky, violent, yet satirical games made about her online for making bigoted statements.
Last summer, misogynists were engaged in a virulent hate campaign against Anita Sarkeesian. You may not want to look at this next slide. Oh, there we go.
Here's what happens when a man has his potential employers contacted in an attempt to render him unemployable while having thousands of people accusing him of being a misogynist. Weird, right? Misogyny is our status quo.
With enough voices coming together on an issue, we can reach new frontiers of fairness and justice in our interactions, online and offline.
This is not justice. This is an angry mob. This person committed no crime. This person made a satirical, albeit violent, game about Anita Sarkeesian with a very long preface detailing why he made it and what he believes and advocates for. The only crime this person committed in order for you to attempt to render him unemployable is making something you didn't like. You do not rule over social etiquette. You and your group of minions simply cannot and will not dictate what is appropriate and inappropriate, what is criminal or isn't criminal, and what actions require an angry mob, justice. You desire power, and no matter how it affects someone's life, no matter whether your pawns are accusing him of something he isn't, calling his potential employers and accusing him of being something he isn't, that's justice to you. You exercise power you shouldn't have over others, and you laugh about it. You are an evil human being.
That is why a dictum like "don't feed the trolls" is so harmful and even dangerous when you apply it to something like misogyny.
How about applying it to contacting someone else's potential employers for petty reasons, while that person unleashes thousands of their obedient cogs for the sole purpose of calling you a misogynist? Nah.
It creates a discourse dominated by misogynists.
Yet simply by tweeting, others retweet, you got thousands upon thousands of people joining the discussion and got the media to cover you stirring up a hate campaign against someone and calling it his just desserts. Then you have the gall to try and get people emotionally worked up over the whole Sarkeesian thing.
I want to close by telling you about how you can use some of these features of online communication to better understand and confront bigotry in your day-to-day life. Visibility means that whether you're subject to a form of bigotry or not, chances are examples of it will abound on the internet. Use that visibility to help change the tide. Follow websites and Twitter accounts of people who speak out about bigotry regularly, as well as aggregators like Yes, You're Racist. Bookmark the really vivid examples to share with someone who tells you that racism is no longer a serious problem in our society.
Right, because in order to determine what society thinks, we need to view a Twitter account that does nothing but tweet what racists say. If their definition of racism is similar to your definition of misogyny, then I think we can discredit it outright, but let's say that they are all legitimate racist tweets for the sake of fairness here. What you're asking people to do is surround themselves with confirmation bias. You are asking them to follow Twitter accounts that do nothing but browse Twitter for sexist and racist things and then retweets them. Even if they were all actually sexist and racist tweets, that doesn't prove that society is racist or sexist or even that these things are huge problems. I could browse Twitter and retweet nothing but horrible things people say about men. Most, if not all of them, would come from the feminist camp, I'm sure. You can do this with anything. Stop asking people to surround themselves with confirmation bias. Considering what your audience finds comical, they probably aren't too fond of men anyhow.
Virality means that inevitably some of these conversations about bigotry will reach your newsfeed or timeline. When that happens, don't sit on the sidelines. Participate.
By contacting that disgusting misogynist, even though they aren't actually a misogynist, potential employer so he'll never be hired. I love social consequences. They make me feel powerful. Or did you mean something else?
State your opinion in a comment thread. Voice your agreement or disagreement with another commenter, or even just like or retweet a comment that you agree with. It's not that hard. We want as many voices as possible to be involved in drawing these new lines in our social sand.
What if people disagree about where those lines should be? Or do we all have to defer to you?
Finally, perform the type of engagement you want to see. Argue for the kinds of change you think are important in ways that you would like to see others argue for them, and invite others to be part of your performance. Start by considering the implications of using a dismissive word like trolling to describe misogyny and other forms of dehumanizing bigotry. If this is the word our society is bent on using to describe this kind of viewpoint, then frankly, we need a whole new philosophy for dealing with trolls.
Apparently, the new philosophy is to ruin their career for insulting almighty you over the internet. How can you possibly be willing to ruin another human being's life simply because they called you a nasty name? And then claim that they are the bad guys in this scenario. It's like someone throwing a water balloon at you, then you shoot them in the head and say we can't tolerate their behavior anymore.
Strike "don't feed the trolls" from your lexicon if you're talking about a misogynist.
Misogynist doesn't equal person who insults you online. Sorry.
We feed bigots by meeting their hatred with collective silence.
Powerful ending. You aren't feeding trolls when you're enacting your social justice on people who you think deserve punishment. You're feeding yourselves. You are the trolls, Miss Guthrie. You did this entire thing to provoke. The scary part is that instead of pretending to hold a horrid belief to elicit a reaction, you actually hold the beliefs. Not liking you individually is not bigotry against all women. Once you learn that, you may begin to start acting more like someone who desires equality, and not someone who desires the mere ability to exercise power over other people by calling them bigots and harassers whenever they feel like it. Have a wonderful day.